Hello, hello, welcome. This is the Body of Christ Real Talk by your host, Joseph Brownlee. Welcome to the Body of Christ Real Talk. Okay? Without further ado, I'm going to get right at it. This is the number 2 segment on giving up your freedom for fear. The number 2 segment on giving up your freedom for fear. Joe, what do you mean by that? I got a series going on right now that I'm going to be introducing and exposing some truth, what's really going on with the madness around us with these vaccination mandates and mask mandates and resets and different things like that. So stay tuned for that. I'm getting right to it in its entirety because I'm trying to keep these segments short. And I just want you to hear from some of these researchers themselves with deep information of what's going on. This is the other side of true news that I'm presenting. Not what you're going to get from the mainstream media. Mainstream media meaning CNN, CBS, MSNBC, NBC, ABC, and even Fox News. Yes, Fox News as well. They're the only ones that's hanging in there, but they're also selling out too as well. This is Joseph Brownlee, your host of Body of Christ Real Talk, where I talk about events that's going on around the Christian life, Body of Christ within and right in front of us. I talk about different subjects of social media, like politics, businesses, fun conversations, special events that's going on around us, prayer and different subjects and topics as well. And this section, I got a series that's going on that's called Giving Up Your Freedom for Fear. Giving Up Your Freedom from Fear. I hope you heard and listened to my last podcast. But without further ado, I'm going to get into my opinionated response to this report. And if you want some more information on this real journalist, just let me know. Give me a comment. I'm not just going to send it to you. You got to let me know that you're really interested in this stuff, because this is the real deal. This is the alternative news that I listen to. I thank God for this. We need to be on our P&Qs. Not because to be afraid, but to be a beacon light to others, especially the body of Christ that's not paying attention to what's going on around us, okay? So without further ado, you'll hear more from me because this is not about me. This is about what's going on around under your necks and a lot of your body of Christ and your Christians and some unbelievers, but mainly you Christians are not even paying attention to it. So without further ado, here's a segment, from the CDC himself. Now, I'm going to give some excerpts and I'm going to read a few things that the CDC is saying themselves. So it's not conspiracy theory and it's not a lie or it's not nothing I'll be making up. On their own websites and certain entities of their website, they admit certain things that they're doing or what they're going to stop doing, just like these tests. They're going to try to change whatever I believe by the end of this year. But that's another story. I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's listen to this journalist that's going to do their research themselves. Thank God that I don't have to. I just follow up and I let it be known from there. This is the CDC admits, from this journalist, from the Truth of the Press of the Truth, something like that, that's going to be talking about what's going on. I might not play all of it. It all depends on the distractions I get in the area that I'm working at. So without further ado, this is Joseph Brownlee, Body of Christ Real Talk, with some real news that's going on with all this madness. God bless you. Stay tuned.
Lab alert. Changes to CDC RT-PCR for SARS-CoV-2 testing. Hi there, everyone. This is Dan Dix here reporting for Press for Truth. And as you can tell by the title of this video, the CDC now says that PCR tests cannot differentiate between coronaviruses. Therefore, the cold and COVID are synonymous. Now, I wasn't sure if I should use the symbol for therefore in the title of this video because it's often not really used outside of the realms of mathematics and science and venturing into the area of opinion. But considering that the so-called fact checkers themselves are not operating within the realms of mathematics and science and are venturing into the area of opinion, I thought this symbol was quite fitting to use today. So today we're going to take a look at this. This is a tweet that I just put out last night that's getting a lot of attention, a lot of retweets. It says, the CDC admits that PCR tests can't differentiate between coronaviruses. Let that sink in. That means that for the past year and a half, colds and the flu have been diagnosed as COVID. Let that sink in, ladies and gentlemen. And I put the same thing on my Facebook page. As you can see here, we can't look at that right now. If we want to do, we have to click here. This is because it's been labeled as false information checked by independent fact checkers. And as we see here on this tweet, we have people like Sassy Sue here chiming in. Let this sink in. And she links to this article, viral post misrepresents CDC announcement on COVID-19 PCR test. So who's telling the truth, folks? Is it this crazy conspiracy theorist guy who has these false information labels put on his post by fact checkers, or the fact checkers themselves, who certainly have never been wrong and are not venturing into the area of opinion? Well, guys, we're going to look at all of this and much, much more in today's video, guys. But before we do, real quickly, if you do appreciate my efforts to bring you this information, I ask that you check us out here at pressfortruth.ca/donate. Here you can do a one-time contribution with PayPal. You can do Bitcoin. You can become a PFD patron. You can contribute on a monthly recurring contribution here. You can contribute an e-transfer to Dan at pressfortruth.ca, or you can also send anything you'd like to my P.O. box. Links are all located in the description below. Thank you so much to anybody who does support my efforts. All right, guys, let's jump right into this. This is the article from the CDC that is causing all the controversy, so let's jump into it. It says here, after December 31st, 2021, CDC will withdraw the request to the FDA for the emergency use authorization of the CDC 2019 novel coronavirus real-time RT-PCR diagnosis panel. The assay first introduced in February 2020 for detection of SARS-CoV-2 only. Remember that, SARS-CoV-2 only. CDC is providing this advance notice for clinical laboratories to have adequate time. Given the loss of time, here's a list of the different new ones from the FDA that you can check out. So it says here, in preparation for this change, CDC recommends clinical laboratories and testing sites that have been using the CDC 2019 CoV RT-PCR assay select and begin their transition to another FDA-authorized COVID-19 test. So here they're saying that the current PCR tests that have been used and are being used, they want you to start transitioning after December 31st, 2021, giving you a bit of time, start to transition into another FDA-authorized COVID-19 test. Now, here's the part that creates all the controversy. CDC encourages laboratories to consider adoption of a multiplex method that can do what? Facilitate detection and differentiation of SARS-CoV-2 and the influenza viruses. Let's read that one more time. CDC encourages laboratories to consider adoption of a multiplex method that can facilitate detection and differentiation of SARS-CoV-2 and influenza viruses. Here, we see they are telling you to stop using the old one and start transitioning to the new one. They claim the old one is testing for SARS-CoV-2 only. Meanwhile, what they want you to...
Okay, let me stop right there. Now I'm going to get back to the audio, video audio. Now, do you hear that? Now, when I'm showing these videos, I'm letting you listen to these audios by video, because I cannot show you a video because we're on audio, of course. And I want you to just listen to this. Now, this is my interpretation. The tests that they use for COVID, the COVID tests. Now, this is happening now. This is the CDC admitting this on their own site. You can look that up. I have information on that, you can look all that stuff up and read it for yourself, so you don't think I'm just, coming up with a lot of fake jazz. But no, this is real talk. And they are planning before the end of this year, like you said, December 31st, 2021, before the end of this year, to change the protocol of testing. Okay? And I'm going to let you finish it, because there's some powerful stuff here. I'm trying to keep this short, probably 25 minutes long, if I could, without any distractions. And I want you to listen to that. Why are they doing that? Okay? Because they don't work. I'm just going to make it plain. They're not working. There's a lot of positives saying negative, and there's a lot of negatives saying positives. And a lot of things they are testing, it got to do with colds and influenza and different things like that, but they call it COVID. That's how they was able to pad up the numbers, according to a lot of research and other listeners that I listened to. Not listeners, but other people that I was listening to. Okay, so they're going to change the protocol, how to be tested, So look out for this. I'm going to let this finish and everything because I want to get this out the way. Let me continue.
Transition into using is something that can facilitate the detection and differentiation of SARS-CoV-2, meaning that this cannot detect the differentiation. Therefore, as I said back here on Twitter, that means that for the past year and a half, colds and the flu, more so colds, have been diagnosed as COVID, ladies and gentlemen. And it's not just me saying that the PCR tests are reliable.
Okay, did you hear that? Now, I'm going to be, I'm sorry to do this, but this is just for the ones who not understanding it and everything like that. You probably do, but I'm not sure. Probably some listeners that's not getting it. The colds, influenza, let me say this first. Have you been paying attention? You don't hear too much about colds, influenza, or even the flu, which is one of the number one killer of viruses. You notice you haven't heard a lot about that in the last couple of years since this COVID-19 thing has been going on. Have you noticed that? Huh? Is it just me? Is it just me? My antennas going up? What is it? A red flag? Have you ever noticed that? They don't talk about these other germs and viruses. Everything was dominated by COVID. Wow, you haven't noticed that? How they come up with these numbers? They just throw some numbers out there. How do they come up with these numbers? How do they just throw these numbers out there? No one fact checks them. No one researches. No one does nothing. We just believe it. We just believe it. I ain't gonna say we, but I'm just saying some of you guys just believe it. Okay, just listen to this. Wow, it's amazing. I always thought that, that me and my brother, we talk about that a lot, it's just common sense to me. You don't talk about colds, you don't talk about flu or none of that. Everything is COVID. Everybody getting diagnosed with COVID and everything. The same symptoms you have with flus and colds are being called COVID. But they're messing up now. It's been proven now, and they're going to try to change it now. And let me get back to this. Continue.
Not so much that they're not reliable, but more so that the interpretations of the data is being misrepresented and abused. I'm not the only one saying that.
I don't think they're reliable, my opinion.
The creator of the PCR test himself who was saying this. So let's hear it from the horse's mouth himself. This is Kerry Mullis, the inventor of the PCR test.
Listen to this. This is powerful, folks. Listen to this.
It can be misused.
Misuse PCR to estimate all these supposed free viral RNAs that may or may not be there. Does it sound? I think misuse PCR is not quite. I don't think you can misuse PCR. The results, the interpretation of it. See, if you can say
interpretation, listen to his wording
if they
carefully.
Can find this virus in you at all. And with PCR, if you do it well, you can find almost anything in anybody. It starts making you believe in the sort of Buddhist notion that everything is contained in everything else, right? I mean, because if you can amplify one single molecule up to something that you can really measure, which PCR can do, then there's just very few molecules that you don't have at least one single one of them in your body.
Coronavirus
so that can be thought of as a misuse of it, just to claim that it's meaningful. But the real misuse of it is you don't need to test for HIV. You don't need to test for the other 10,000 retroviruses that are unnamed also in the
subject. You hear that? Listen.
See, somebody that's got HIV generally is going to have almost anything that you can test for because they have definitely been. HIV is a fairly rare virus. There's only 1 million of us out of 250, 300 million people in America that have that virus. So you have to get around. Either your mother had to have it and pass it to you, or you have to really be paying a lot of attention to people that do have it and paying only attention to them and get a pretty good chance of getting it that way. It's hard to get it. But if you have it, there's a good chance you've also got a lot of other ones. Because you've been in the market where it's been possible for you to get a lot of... to test